Did you ever wish to bring the excessive heat that you suffer in the summer to the winter and vice versa? To me it happens twice every year, in the winter and in the summer, and especially during a heat wave or a blackout, certainly if it becomes life-threatening. We are talking here about seasonal storage, and that must be very high-tech and also very expensive, isn't it? Well, I will show you today that it is possible, also at your home and for 300 euros. Hi, Norbert here, energy engineer, and explaining in video number 64 how to realize an innovative but inexpensive way of storing thermal energy, bringing the summer heat, the excessive summer heat, to the winter, and vice versa, bringing the winter cold to the summer, using only a chest freezer and some household items. Now you might want to know what's the concept and why in the first place we need a new solution. Yes, we are in a realm of seasonal energy storage, going forwards in a time machine, from the winter to the summer and vice versa. In a time machine with a lot of energy in our luggage. That's an expensive ticket, man. No, I was looking for a dirt cheap solution that I can also show to you. And the temptation is so big, because every year again, I think in the summer and in the winter, about how good it would be if it's so cold in the winter that I can take a little bit of that cold for the summer when I really crave it, I need it. And also vice versa. In the summer it's so hot, all this excessive heat, and if I could only take a little bit away and use it in the winter. And then it can also be life-saving. The statistics, they show it. In Europe alone, there are 60,000 people that die during heat waves. So then I would like to have this cold from the winter and to have it available in the summer. The summer is already in decline and we are already worrying about the winter. You know, also the economic conflict between the East and the West. It can be a future full of surprises. But I don't want you to spend too much on it. Don't be surprised if I ask you to do a little bit of work also during the usage, at no luxury either. Okay, I will anyway give a suggestion to make it easier, but then it will become also more complex. To you the choice. What is the heart of the system? Well, the whole system turns around a heat pump. You know from my other videos that I like heat pumps very much. And this time I have a chest freezer. I don't have it here, but in the other house. But anyway, in contrary to the two other videos which I showed, I don't want here complex water circuits. I really want to keep it simple and cheap. So part of this freezer is at the back side is the condenser, which gives heat, which is usually wasted. And now I want to use it. And of course it is very limited, because this freezer, it consumes about 100 watt. So this condenser, the warm side, gives about 350 watt or so. So that's limited. It's not a big heating system. And it might be enough only for one person. For example, a person which is working, which is maybe very old and sits always in the same chair. You are working, you have maybe one person in the family that is always working and reading in the same place behind the computer or so. So you get cold in the winter. And inside this freezer you can put bottles of water. So you have empty mineral water bottles and you fill it with the tap, normal water, and you put it in the freezer. Remember that water has a big energy storage capacity. I can say to you that if you have water of 0 degrees and you freeze it, that it becomes ice of also 0 degrees, it has no temperature difference. But the cold that you need and that you store in this ice is as big as when you cool the same amount of water from 80 degrees Celsius to 0 degrees Celsius. So it's a lot of energy. And where will you put these things? Okay, the freezer is, for example, in the basement, exactly under the place where I am working or studying. And near the freezer is also where I store all these ice bottles. You keep them in a good insulated place, very compact. We talk about 1 cubic meter of ice, which is divided over 500 bottles of 2 liter. And then there's a question how these frozen bottles translate in the cooling that we need during the summer. Well, I think there are many ways that you can use these 500 bottles for cooling in the summer. You can do what you want. For example, you can install a frozen bottle behind a fan so that air from the fan will be much cooler. You can put bottles in the fridge during a blackout. Your food will stay fresh for a very long time. You can also drink it if the water is clean enough. I drink water from the tap. Well, there are many solutions. You can bring these bottles in a camping icebox to the place where you live. You have always 8 bottles or so where you need it. And the advantage of this system is also that during a heat wave you have those 500 bottles all at once. So even if, for example, this freezer produces only 250 watts of cooling power, now you have this storage, all those 500 bottles, and you can use them so quickly as you want. If you want, you can also take a bath at 0 degrees. Isn't it unrealistic to move around 500 bottles? Well, it takes 300 hours to freeze all those 500 bottles. That's nearly 2 frozen bottles each hour. So, if you want to use the warm side of this freezer to heat yourself during 10 hours a day, then you produce about 8 bottles per day, and you have to bring them from the freezer to this ice box which you have close to the freezer, of course. And let's say that in this way, with 10 hours a day of operation, you have in 1 month 1 cubic meter of ice. And that has an energy value of 92 kilowatt hours of cold. And if you compare that with an air conditioner, which produces maybe 2.5 kilowatt, then that's some 35 hours of full operation of this air conditioner. So it's quite a bit, but of course not enough for the whole summer. And as I told you, it's also not meant to cover the whole summer. You can of course also spread these 300 hours over 2 months, and then you have less work to do, but you have also less heat in the winter to consume. And then talking about these bottles, if you drink regularly mineral water from bottles, or you have the bottles from other kinds of drinks, then it's not difficult to collect this amount of bottles, and you can also go to your neighbor and it will be a great recycling project. I promised you also an alternative, that would be that you bring the cold from the freezer to a container of 1 cubic meter with a water circuit, and in the water circuit you have anti-freeze. You can freeze all the water in this tank, but of course it's more complex. You have this closed circuit that you have to realize, but also then how do you bring this cold from the basement, from this big container, to your living space? The choice is yours. Why is this system twice as efficient as the air conditioner? I heard this sometimes in your videos. Well, in the first place, you have the double use of the heat pump, and in the past in other videos you see already that I apply it, and I believe really that we don't have to waste the warm side of the freezer, which we do usually. So that's the explanation that I always say, that I found a way to double the efficiency of a heat pump or an air conditioner. The other reason that I think that we are talking about high efficiency is that usually you have a freezer that works at minus 18 degrees or lower. And now we have these bottles which are still water, and they are at 0 degrees. So that means also that the freezer is working at maybe a few degrees below 0. So that's a big difference of temperature. The freezer is working in a much more relaxed working point. And also from the other side you have the warm backside of the freezer, which is usually at 40 or 50 degrees or so, and often there's not even a ventilation on this warm side. But now I propose that you close this backside so that it's airtight, and you put a fan inside it, and on the other side you put a hose on the exit, and you will blow the air through this flat box. So there's a better heat exchange at the condenser, the warm side. That means it will work at a lower temperature. So from the both sides you have an optimization of the working point of the heat pump, and that is why it will work also at a higher efficiency. This system produces the heat we need in the winter, but at the same time it produces the cold. Only that cold will be stored to be used many months after. Yes, and I think we found here a very interesting point of this configuration, because at the first place, let's say we are in summer and we have all these frozen bottles, and then we can use this system in two ways. At the first place, we have those frozen bottles which you can use in a quick way, so with a big capacity, with a big power, because they are all at our disposal. And from the other side, we have still this system which is still producing cold. You can use it together with the cold that you have already in the bottles. Isn't it difficult to store ice for such a long time without melting? Yes, of course, that's difficult, if not impossible. But if you keep it very compact and insulated, then you can reach a very good result. The best form to keep it all together with less losses is if you have a sphere. But also a cube is very good. And I will later in this video give calculations on how to do it and how thick the walls must be. What I calculate with that is that you have a loss of 5%. Well, let's now talk about numbers. What numbers are we looking if we talk about the efficiency of this system, and also how much does it cost, and how much can we store, and also how much is the electricity that we consume in this system. How much does that cost? So yes, we have a freezer with a compressor, and that is usually about 100 watt. And of course this 100 watt will run continuously, because you put the freezer on minus 18 degrees and he will never reach it. But on the freezer side, as it is a heat pump principle, you have always much more energy in the form of cold but also of heat than you give in an electric form. And on the cold side you have about 250 watt, and on the hot side, because you have also the heat of the compressor, and so you have about 350 watt, and together 250 and 350 you are at 600 watt, and that's 6 times as much as the input. So, and what is happening is that you run it 300 hours, for example, in the winter, to produce 1 cubic meter of ice. You can also produce more, but then you have also to store it. And it means also that you have 300 hours of nice warm air of 350 watt. It's not much, but it's better than nothing, certainly in emergency situations. And the electricity cost is easy to calculate. You have 300 hours and you have 100 watt. In 1 hour you have 1/10 of a kilowatt hour, so you end up with 30 kilowatt hour. And if 1 kilowatt hour costs 30 cents, then you are at €9 for the whole production of this cubic meter of ice. But you have also this heat, so that's the double value, so then it's really a deal. Many households have only central heating, and also if you have only one person working or standing, or maybe an older person, they have no choice than switching on the central heating. And if that is working on natural gas, then it might take €1 every 2 hours of operation, and then you have only heat. If I'm looking right to it, it is a system that doesn't consume a lot of power. It's a small system, so maybe that can also mean that during a blackout I can run it with solar panels, and maybe also with a battery or a combination of it. Yes, and I want to stress again that this system is the solution for extreme situations, because you have so much energy in the form of these ice bottles. And that's apart from the benefit of having a base load, because this freezer can be working with its 100 watt, and that's a base load enough for heating 1 or 2 persons in the winter. And in the summer, when there's much sun, you can run this system on a PV and on maybe a portable power supply, which can also work together with this PV, so that if the sun is going away for a couple of hours, then you can run this system all the time. So then in the summer you have this base load, but you have also these ice bottles which you can add to the base load production of cold. And having those two solutions is of course an incredible advantage if compared to people which in the case of a blackout don't have anything. And in the same way, in the winter, if you have a blackout, you have less sun, you might need the double amount of PV, and together with this battery system to run this system and give heat in the winter in an effective way, producing also the ice for the summer. Now, another question, and before we look to the economics of this solution and how to realize it, why are you doing all this? Yes, I was many years in the consultancy business for big energy consumers. I must say I had quite a bit of disappointment. It seemed very difficult market for me, but also my colleagues. And not only in one country. I saw this trend in the whole world, that the energy manager is a missing function in many organizations. I was also in organizations of 2,000 employees and workers in factories where I didn't see a real energy manager. I have the impression that for those big organizations, the energy cost is a minor pain point if compared to their other costs. For the households, on the other hand, which I am now working for with this channel, I think that cost is also a pain point, but the bigger pain point is the climate change. Because who raised the kids, if not the households? And I don't know if the climate change is a bigger issue for the households or for the big organizations which have a harder time to survive. But anyway, I decided to turn 180 degrees around towards the citizens. And I hope that you agree with me that we, as normal folks, must also choose to turn around for 180 degrees. We consumers and households, we all together, we are a big consumer. It really can make a difference. I depend on your support as subscriber and also to share this content with other people. I hope you will help me to make this activity a full-time job, and I will do my best to bring innovative content that is realistic, interesting, and can make a difference for you. Now, okay, it is clear how the concept works and that it can be done. But what kind of materials do you need? How do you realize it? And also, how much does it cost? Well, in the base configuration that I propose, the core is of course this freezer, and I bought it for 70 euros. Second hand, let's counter with 100 euros. Then you need the bottles, and then you need also the ice storage, and also the closure, the flat air box at the backside of the freezer. And for this backside you need also a fan and a hose with a big diameter of 10 centimeters. The most work you will have with the ice storage. So you can use a pallet. You have the insulation material of expanded polystyrene, and you make a box with inside dimensions in each of the three directions 120 centimeters, so that even if the bottles don't close very tight together, you will have 1 cubic meter of ice. And if you allow 5% of melt in 5 months of these bottles, with let's say 20 degrees of temperature difference between outside and inside, then you can calculate that the polystyrene has to be about 4 centimeters thick or more. This insulation will cost you about 20 euros. And then the backside of the freezer, where you have this heat exchanger, you have to close it airtight so that you have controlled airflow. So you need also a fan, and you need also a hose so that you can bring the heat where you want, to your work corner, probably in another room. And then you can put the end of the hose, for example, under a table. You can also close it on the sides with the cloth, with the textile. The heat will stay a little bit under the table and flow up your body so that you can enjoy it with the highest efficiency. So you have the configuration that you are in one room as a user, and that the freezer and the ice storage is in another room or in a basement right under where you work. And the airflow required to bring this 350 watt of the backside of the freezer to your workplace. And if you count with a temperature difference of 30 degrees of the temperature of this air and the ambient temperature, that is nearly 10 liters per second. And if you take a hose of 10 centimeters of diameter, then you will have an internal velocity of the air inside that hose of a little bit more than 1 meter per second. So that will not cause much noise, and you will also need less power to create this airflow. I calculated also if the hose is 3 meter, and then you have also the box that with a 15 volt fan you can do this work and you can reach this airflow. You can buy a standard fan working on 12 volt and consuming 15 watt or so, and then you will have also about 40 decibels of noise, which is anyway in the next room or in the basement. So this whole project can be done also without needing very special materials, and also with normal knowledge that we have usually at home. Yes, I think it's simple enough. I will put conservatively the difficulty rate in the description at 60%. And if you don't like the system with the bottles and all the work it brings, well, then you can think of this system which I indicated before, with the water circulation at the cold or the hot side. But okay, then it becomes more difficult and also more expensive. I think also that the main function of this is that you can resist a blackout or extreme temperature situations. So I think that you don't want to spend for something that maybe will not happen with you. And that's the reason that in this video I'm focusing on a very simple system. Now talking about cost. How much could the investment be, and also how much we pay for electricity produced, even if it's only a small system? Yes, so if we are looking at the cost, we have of course to look to the investment, but also to the operation costs. Investment is, we talked already about €100 for the second-hand freezer, and then let's put €100 also in the ice box, and still another 100 for the closure at the backside, the hose and the fan. Then we are at €300. And then the electrical energy, as I said, you need about 9 or 10 euros with the current electricity tariffs to produce 1 cubic meter of ice. You enjoy also the heat and cold, then I think it's really a deal. Okay, and in what situation would you apply this system? What's the main use? Yes, as I said, the system is not intended to have a complete coverage of your heat and cold demand, as I described in other systems in other videos. It's also a very small system, both at the production side and also at the storage side. You are limited. For example, the compressor is only 100 watt. You have only 250 watt of cold production and 350 watt of heat production. And on the storage side, you have this 1 cubic meter of ice, which is which is equivalent to 35 full running hours of an air conditioning. So that's not enough for a whole summer. But okay, I think if you live through an emergency situation, you will be very glad that you have such a system. And of course, even without the emergency, you still can use it as a baseload production. Let's look to the example in a winter to see what the application really is. So in the normal situation, you have the baseload production of heat, the heat for the moment. And at the same time, you are producing cold, which you store until the summer. You don't consume it on the moment. And once you are in the summer, you have also production, a baseload production of 250 watt of cold. And you have also those bottles which you can use also in a quicker way. And then the other application, when you are in an emergency situation, for example, we are still talking about the winter. And for example, 2 years ago, we were in an emergency situation on the fuel market. We had a kind of commercial conflict between the Western world in general and Russia. And there were some weeks and months where the tension on the energy market was very big. And then you have here a system which can run on only 100 watt, solve a lot of problems, and it can even run on PV, even in winter. Even if in winter you will need more of these PV panels than normal. But you can always charge these batteries with the grid, if it is available. And then, still in the emergency situation, and now we talk about the summer, we have this 92 kilowatt hours of cold in this cubic meter of ice bottles. You have now plenty of sun. You can use the PV and batteries to have a base load of 250 watt of cold production. Okay, now we talked mostly about bringing the cold from the winter to the summer, and vice versa. If we are in summer and we want to think about the winter, what do we do? Well, this is a more difficult situation because you don't have in this direction from the summer to the winter this splendid energy storage material which we know as water, which stores so much energy if it changes from water to ice at 0 degrees. Now you want a similar kind of material which does the same at let's say between 30 and 50 degrees. You are talking about paraffin, about wax, but the problems there are too. You need about 2 times more kilograms to store 1 unit, 1 kilowatt hour of heat energy in this form, and also it costs much more. So you pay about 20 euros per kilogram, and you need also 20 kilograms for a kilowatt hour. So then we are talking at about 400 euros per kilowatt hour, and that is as expensive as storing the same amount, 1 kilowatt hour of energy, in a lithium battery. Those batteries which have more or less the format of a car battery. And electric storage is worth more than a thermal storage from the energy point of view. So this becomes a difficult theme, and I would like to resolve that in another video. Okay, so if you are looking for an inexpensive system that is reliable in bringing the cold of the winter to the summer, when you need it during a heat wave or also even with a blackout, then this system could be your independent and inexpensive answer. But for the storage from summer to the winter, so storing heat for the winter, that's another history. We will need to look for another video. But stay tuned and go to look to that video, because we are in September and there are still quite some months that we can store this heat for the winter. If you want to have more of these tips for do-it-yourself and for energy, then hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell so that you won't miss out on useful tips, also when you really need it. Now look to this video where I make bigger system which really will cover you for the whole energy demand, heat and cold, but it is more complex.